So this video is to teach you how to find the solution of a quadratic function using square roots. Just for your knowledge sake, you need to know that a solution, a root, an x-intercept, or a zero all mean the same thing, and it's simply where the graph of a quadratic crosses the x-axis. And remind you, the x-axis is the one that goes left to right or horizontal. Now, looking at these three graphs, y equals x squared. Y equals x squared because there's nothing added to the x squared. Then the vertex is at 0, 0, and it goes up over 1, up 1. Now, because it crosses the x-axis just one time, there's one solution, or root, x-intercept, or 0. X squared plus 1, because there's a 1 added to the x squared, it sends up the graph one place from the vertex. And because there's a 1 in front, it goes up 1 over 1, that means it crosses the x-axis 0 times, so there's no solution. And then finally, x squared minus 1, because the minus 1 sends the graph down 1, then the graph is crossing at 2 places, and so there's 2 solutions. So every quadratic function either has one solution because it touches the x-axis one time, no solution because it does not cross the x-axis, and sometimes we call these imaginary solutions, and that's later in life. And then if it crosses twice, we call it 2 solutions, and those are the only 3 things that can happen. Now, so a question that you might be asked is, does x squared plus 6 equal 5 have no solution, 1 solution, or 2 solutions? Well, you could go and graph, because there's a 5 over here. We could bring it to the left, and that'd be x squared plus 1, and so we're looking at this graph here, which means this one has no solution. But it's not convenient to graph all the time, so what you can do is solve using square roots and see what happens. If we subtract 6 on both sides, then we have x squared equals to negative 1. If you remember, x squared means a number times itself. There is no number times itself that equals a negative, and that's why we say this has no solution. And that's how you find it algebraically. The second equation says x squared plus 12 equals 12. Well, if we subtract 12 from both sides, we get x squared equals to 0. Well, what number times itself equals 0? Well, it's 0, so x equals 0. And 0 is the only number times itself equals 0, so there's only one solution. So there is one solution to this problem. And then finally, if we solve this next one, minus 3 minus 3, x squared equals to 6, and we're subtracting 3 because the opposite of adding 3 is subtracting 3, then what number times itself equals 6? Well, if you remember, the square root of 6 times the square root of 6, because they are the same number, would equal to 6. And so, because of the way the multiplication works, a positive 6 times a positive 6 would equal to a positive 6. The positive square root of 6 times the positive square root of 6 would equal to 6, or a negative square root of 6 times a negative square root of 6 would equal to a positive 6, because negative times negative would be positive, and the square root of 6 times the square root of 6 is square root of 36, which is 6. And so in this case, we have 2 solutions. So in generalization, if the x squared equals to a negative number, it's no solution. If x squared equals to 0, there's one solution. And if x squared equals to a positive number, it's going to be 2 solutions. And that's how you tell how many solutions a quadratic function has. Now, we can solve equations as well using the same technique. So if you have a squared equals to 49, basically, inverse operations, the opposite of taking a square is to take a square root. So if you take the square root of both sides, the square root of a squared is a, because square root and square undo each other. What number times itself equals 49? Either a positive 7 or a negative 7. Because 7 times 7 is 49, or negative 7 times negative 7 is 49. Second problem, a little bit more complicated. Following the order of operations backwards, the opposite of minus 6 is to add 6. So you have d squared is equal to 9. The opposite of the square is a square root, so d equals to 3, or d equals to a negative 3. Number 6, the opposite of subtracting 16 is adding 16. So you got g squared is equal to 16. The opposite of a square is a square root. So g equals to, the square root of 16 is either a positive 4 or a negative 4. And then finally, the last example, the opposite of subtracting 86 is to add 86. So 2h squared is equal to 98. The opposite of multiplying by 2 is to divide 2. So h squared is equal to 49. The opposite of a square is a square root. So h equals 7. Or h equals to a negative 7. So that is how you solve a quadratic function by taking square roots. So yeah,